Corporate Director of Finance. And I'd like to welcome them both. Stephen is joining us via a Teams site, so he'll come on at the end. And Barnabas, do you want to come up and start us off in a prayer or a joke or whatever you have for us today? Although someone just said no jokes, so.
I'm going to start off with a joke. Okay, joke for today. What did the cow say to the butcher? Anyone? That was my second response. You spotted me. Did you get it? I didn't hear anyone laugh yet. Did you get it? You spotted me, cows. So let us pray. Let us pray. Our heavenly gracious Father, we thank you for our meeting today. Thank you for the lovely people that's here. Continue to just guide us here at Edgewater to just make you the center of all things. Continue to bring joy, love, peace, and kindness to all our residents and to all of our employees. So as we continue to talk about the business of Acts, Father, let that be the center of our business, love and kindness. And we thank you for your faithfulness in life today. We ask all this in your name. Amen.
Okay, thank you. So now it gives me great pleasure to introduce George.
Thank you, Susan. And Barnabas, keep your day job. Not all cows have spots, so I was a little thrown off. Just saying. Yep, keep your day job. Amen. It's my pleasure to be here today. I know we're recording and we have residents who've watched at home. And there may be questions. I actually had to watch one portion of the presentation a couple of times because a lot of information came out really fast. But we are here to be able to answer questions. We're going to show the video first. It's about a little over 22 minutes, so it's a brief video. This is our third town hall of the year. The first and the third are typically open topics or topics of general interest across all Acts communities. And the second and fourth town halls are always finance and nature. The second town hall of the year covers the prior year's operations budget and how we ended the year. And the fourth town hall projects into the next year. So that'll be in November when we have that town hall. So we're going to go ahead and start the video right here. Yeah. And then we'll take some questions if there are any.
I'm not sure I muted Stephen, so he's not going to know when to.
Hello, and welcome to the September Town Hall presentation. I'm Karen Christensen, President of ACTS. Today we will be presenting information about the growing ACTS family,
categories to our growth. First, we have a long history of continually
Okay, this is one we applaud. All right, a lot of detailed information. We did have one question submitted in advance that was unrelated necessarily to the presentation, but I thought I would open up for any questions regarding the presentation today. We have one in the back. Do we have a microphone roving? In the back row there.
If someone, I originally had signed up with Lanier Village Estates 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And if someone from Lanier wanted to move to Florida and say go to Dunedin, how would that work?
Good question. I'm going to take a shot at this, Stephen. I think I know the answer. Now, if Meese Life were already part of the obligated group, there's some consistency and knowledge of the pricing and the amenities that are included. Meese Life, and some language was used, and I don't remember the exact language, but we're looking at it as a kinder cost community. It's not apples to apples. Each community has different entry fees and different monthly maintenance fees and different expectations of the residents. To transfer now would be a challenge. I believe, though, once the contract has been, unless it's already been reworked, but once the ACTS contract for Meese Life is established, then there's a process from a financial perspective to compare apples to apples, with what that move may cost. But I don't, I can get the specific answer. I know we've even had employees ask, I have friends, I have family over in that part of the state, I'd love to be able to transfer. So great question. I'm going to have to get back with you in the details unless Stephen has more insight.
Yeah, I really don't, George, because that policy has yet to be established. But it's a good question because, as you said, it's the answer is a little more clear if it were to be a resident that would, take advantage of an ACTS contract offering at Meese Life once we're affiliated with them. But someone on a current Meese Life contract that was interested in transferring that policy and procedure has yet to be determined.
And this, if I'm not mistaken, it was from Lanier to Meese Life.
Oh, Lanier to Meese Life.
Yeah,
well, I mean,
I think similar challenges, because we're still, we're not affiliated yet. But I remember when we affiliated with Westminster Village, we had some similar requests, residents across ACTS that were looking at Westminster Village. And it takes a bit, like the sales team is in there now looking at the pricing, the model, the advertising. It's going to take on a new, fresh look as a community. But those details are needed in order to establish what that transfer looks like financially. So I would advise if there's someone specific, they can work. Susan can help, communicate. Great. Right. Perfect. She likes the West Coast. To each his own, right? Right. Another question.
What does ACTS do if an affiliate doesn't meet their financial responsibilities?
I'll start, Stephen, and then you fill in any details I miss. But
George, could you just repeat the question for me before you get started?
Oh, sure. What does ACTS do if an affiliate does not meet their financial obligations?
Okay. All right. Thanks. Go ahead.
So, as indicated in the video, an affiliate is a standalone with look at it like we're the parent, the co-signer. So ACTS is a guarantor for the affiliate. If they should not meet their obligations, Karen mentioned a line of credit that can be established, So ACTS would help support through any financial challenges. They would help support that community. I can assure you, by being boots on the ground in an affiliate community, was newly affiliated, a lot of energy goes into not letting that happen. And I know we looked at and talked about management structure as well. Understand that a 1964 organization, they have their own culture and history and evolution, but they are in-house. They have their own accounting department. All their brain power, the organization between the board of directors and the leadership, is all under that one roof. The ACTS family is very diverse. So, their business office will downsize because Axe Management will take over the back of the house services, such as payroll, the details behind the human resources operations, a lot of aspects, the auditing, financial financial reporting. So they will become part of the Axe machine, if you will, of oversight. And Axe is a very conservative organization. As you know, all board of directors, all volunteers. They're not willing to take on a lot of risk, as you can imagine, and it's a big organization. I use this example this morning at St. Andrews because it's current in your area, close. Miami. Did you hear? I was listening to NPR this morning. You hear about the mayor in Miami. Like there are a lot of government officials, by virtue of their role in government, have put themselves in trouble legally. So they have personal legal challenges. Our board doesn't want to take on liability as becoming and supporting Axe. We have a lot of fantastic leaders on the board. But because of that, we have a very conservative audit and oversight process to make sure that we're dotting I's and crossing T's and looking for challenges before they come up. So I mentioned that all their leadership's under one roof. I'm sure they have a lot of great experience. But with the diverse experience that Axe leadership has at all levels that we tap into, we bring to bear a lot to help any organization that has a challenge. That's why they come knocking on our doors. To help them through challenging times. But they would need to stand on their own. But they would, if there was a perceived issue, Axe is essentially the co-signer. You have another question, but I want to see if I missed anything or if there are any other final points.
Yeah, the only thing I would add, George, is that, at the risk of sounding overly confident, this is one area where we really, are batting 1,000 so far with affiliates where, we're careful to keep them as their own legal structure until they hit certain metrics when it comes to profitability and occupancy percentages. But I mean, there was one slide that showed it showed the growth by state and then by year. And, the last half of that chart was affiliations as opposed to ground up, building through or expanding through building. And, the list goes kind of on and on. Park Point, Azalea Trace, Magnolia Trace, the PUMH communities, more recently Evergreens and Westminster. Some have taken more time than others, but we don't allow them to come into the Axe obligated group structure until they are really sufficient on their own, and we've yet to have one that hasn't eventually got there. And because of many of the things you mentioned, even though we're two different legal entities, an affiliate will get the advantage of our size and stature in the continuing care retirement community space. So we're able to apply our leverage to get better terms with contractors, to get better terms for their debt. And that is part of the road of getting them to profitability, and only when they are there do they become part of the Axe obligated group.
Other questions?
Since Axe now is the third largest not-for-profit organization in the country, and they have 10,000 residents and about 8,000 in staff, is every community a not-for-profit community?
Yes. Simply put.
Simply put, yes. Another question?
Is your eventual goal to buy the community, to own the community outright like you do this one or all the other ones?
I know it's complicated, but as a not-for-profit, there really isn't an owner, and they talk about it in the video. Karen talks about it. But
to be a non-affiliate, let's say that.
A non-affiliate, so
But
to become part of the obligated group.
Right.
So that's really more of a change in the financial model. Like that company that's established will be dissolved, and then they would be rolled into the obligated group. But as a not-for-profit, there really aren't any owners. So there's no money to be paid. I know that through different affiliations, they all look a little different. Some come to the door with debt, and all come to the door with assets. Some come to the door with debt that might not be efficiently financed, but because of our strength, we can adjust that financing and make it more favorable. Some come with no financial problems at all, and they have deep pockets, and they just have a leadership evolution. PUMH was that example. They were at a point in their growth where they had leadership, that were retiring, and they had close ties with ACTS, and really just, it's like dropping the keys to the front door in our hands. And they had cash, deep pockets of cash reserves. They didn't have financial trouble, but they're looking to management. They're looking to leadership. So it's not going to be purchased. It will at some point that's unmeasured, and there's not a set date or time. It's based on performance. At some point, the legal entity that they're going to be operating under is going to be dissolved, and then they would be rolled into the obligated group under our current structure.
So that's what you call it, obligated group? Okay.
Correct. And then that's under the obligated group. All function under one employee ID number. It's one company. Frustrating to communities because we come do the reports, about the financial health of the organization, and we show you what the company looks like, and you say, but what about here? But it's not that simple. It's very complex because there are a lot of expenses that are not borne in the community. So if you say, well, we're doing great, without ACTS, well, you don't know what, you don't understand the whole model. And explaining it to some residents, it's like, wow, way too much information. And others put on their CEO hats and want to take over and run the organization. But the obligated group is one organization, and each community contributes something in some way, whether it's financial or programmatic. When we affiliate, we also learn a lot, by how we, in fact, not the affiliation, but the alliance with Willow Valley. The alliance, their culture evolved differently, and their programming for memory care was just in a different place. They had a different path they followed. So we learn from the affiliations too, because other things that would otherwise be more confidential and organizations wouldn't openly share, they share. But the group buying power, I'm aware, I was on the Leading Age board for years, and ACTS as an organization has stronger buying power than Leading Age Florida's collective group. I forget what it's called, Quality First. So just the size of ACTS, and that's another reason Willow Valley had such interest. During the pandemic, they could not get critical supplies. As good as their credit, their reputation, everything is great about, and they're a large organization, we could get the supplies they needed, and through networking, we helped them. And that's when they opened their eyes to say, wow, it does help to be part of a larger family. So Meese Life, when I meet with the residents there, one of their first questions is going to be, when are we going to be part of the obligated group? And I'll have the same dialogue and talk about the process. There is no date set. It's based purely on their ability their operational ability and ability to contribute to the obligated group and not be a liability. We did have one question submitted that was unrelated to the presentation, and the resident wasn't able to be here, but we did promise to answer this question to make sure it's clear to all. And the question is, why did ACTS go the monthly increase? Why did ACTS have a monthly increase of 7.5%? And FLICRA, that's Florida Life Care Residents Association, states that the national increase was 5.5%. And then, I'm skipping through. My question is specific. Why did ACTS go up 2.5% above the average, and we're not for profit? Okay, I actually forwarded the link to Susan so she sees it. What FLICRA was referring to was a September of 2022 Ziegler report. Ziegler is a large financial and auditing firm that specializes in senior care. The link, Susan has the link so you can see the data yourself. It's true, actually it was 5.33% was the national average. What it doesn't take into account is that there were mid-year assessments given by different communities, as well, which is not measured in this. So in other words, in 2022, when we were really hit hard nationally, some CCRCs actually had mid-year assessments to make up a gap. But moreover, that survey included respondents from Type A, Type C, rental, modified, and equity contracts. 32% of the respondents were Type A. That's where we are, CCRC Type A contract. That's a life care all-inclusive. 34% were Type C, fee for service. So you pay a fee, but then you pay a la carte for everything else you do. Okay, so those aren't apples to apples when you say, well, what does it really cost to live there? Well, it depends, because your monthly fee is X, but then ours is inclusive, Type C is not. So I just, that's the swing that was as low as 4% and as high as 12%. Ours was 7.5. Now we do not do assessments. There was no assessment. But if you recall the presentation, and we still probably have it on the portal if someone would love to look at it again, all the financial numbers going into this year, that 7.5% was a break-even number. So in other words, usually the last few slides that we have, and this will be in the upcoming presentation for the fourth quarter, the last few slides show financial ratios. They show the investment. They show our reserves and the investment into reserves. ACTS is a not-for-profit. There aren't shareholders. There aren't dividends paid. But the excess revenue is invested back into the organization. Part of that is needed to maintain our investment grade rating. That's why we get the low interest rates, which is part of the buying power. So we're keeping a balance through the process. Because of the confidence that the rating agencies have with ACTS, we maintained our A-, I believe it is, rating. We maintained our rating without reinvesting. So it's a break even without building our reserves and maintaining some of the ratios as we typically would. And I don't know that we need to get into the specifics of the ratios, but it was break even at 7.5%. I can share, there were a lot of controversial conversations we had about like saving paper. $1.5 million company-wide by going to those green clamshells and reducing our printing. But that $1.5 million equates into a portion of a percentage that could have been, if we didn't make those changes and cuts, would have been part of the increase. So we really went under the hood to keep it at 7.5%. Others, it's not apples to apples. So there is that report. I sent it to Susan. If anyone would like to see the Ziegler report, it was from September of 2022, projecting into 2023 budget. She has access to it. But that's the answer to the question. It's really every community, every organization has different pressures. They have different history. They had different things that pressure their budgeting projections for the next year. So they're never apples to apples of what those pressures are. They may have financing going on or other issues that they're managing, but I can assure you that we scrubbed hard to get to 7.5%, and we're not proud. We're proud to have been able to do that because we know what it could have been, but we also know the impact that it has on you individually, and it's not favorable. Stephen, anything to expand on?
Yeah, actually, there is one thing I want to add is that it's very important to point out that that 2023 rate that was quoted by FLYCRA, which, as you mentioned, was them publishing a survey results from Ziegler, who is an investment bank. Those 2023 rates were projections for 2023 at the time that the survey was taken. I have found that same table from Ziegler in a newsletter that they put out that indicates 2023's actual increase from their survey respondents was actually up at 6.3. So from their projection to what actually came to be actually went up almost a full percentage point. So that's one thing to take into consideration. The second thing is I would just amplify the point that you made that ACTS residents are predominantly on Type A, what are called Type A contracts, which is where your monthly fee does not increase due to a level of care change. On the Ziegler survey, only about 1/3 of the respondents were Type A. Another 1/3 was Type C, which was fee for service, meaning you've got an independent living rate and then you're paying per diem rates in the higher levels of care. And then the other 1/3 was a combination of either rental agreements or the Type B modified. So to your point, George, you really have to be careful that you're making an apples to apples comparison when you're viewing survey results such as this.
Thank you, Stephen. Another question?
Steve, I know you can answer this with one answer, one word. When a maintenance fee increase or decrease is established for Edgewater, is that the same percentage that every other community similarly is charged?
So George, I'm gonna see if I heard the question correctly. Is it that does every community get the same monthly fee increase?
That's correct.
Okay. That has been my experience. So I'm in my 11th year at ACTS, and I don't know that I have ever seen where a community, like certain communities, get a different increase. There are 2 communities in Delaware, Cokesbury Village and Country House, and the Evergreens in New Jersey have much higher monthly fees, and all 3 of those communities are former affiliates. And a lot of the pre-affiliation monthly fees, the related to pre-affiliation contracts, the monthly fees are much higher than the standard ACTS monthly fees. For those residents, they get the dollar value increase of their similar size unit. So if a 1-bedroom, and again, let's just say I'm making numbers up right now, but if a resident at a 1-bedroom apartment in a typical ACTS community is getting, say, a $130 increase as a result of their percent monthly fee increase, the residents at those 3 communities get that same dollar value, which turns out to be a lower percent for them, but they wind up paying the same dollar. And again, that is just in recognition that their pre-affiliation monthly fees are so much higher than what the typical monthly fee on an ACTS contract is.
Right, and that's a method to close that gap without handicapping the community as well.
Yeah.
It's also
And
utilized for that second person fee that upon affiliation or for different reasons they can vary, or from a market perspective that can vary based on where our communities operate. So the second person fee can be a similar calculation to as Stephen outlined.
No, yeah, and that's true. And forgive me that there's not a better way to explain that, but that philosophy for those residents paying the much higher monthly fees is really just kind of in recognition that you're paying more, and we're going to try to be fair to you. So as a dollar value, they're similar. For those communities, the percent increase actually varies.
Everything you wanted to know about ACTS financing. Well, thank you for coming today. Did you have anything you'd like to close with, or?
Just wanted to thank both George and Stephen for a great presentation and fielding the questions. There was one other question, but it's related to common space here on our property. So next week at the normal Ask the Director, I'll answer this question directly. And I hope you join me next week when we speak specifically about Edgewater and what's happening here on our campus. So thank you for being here. Thank you, George. Thank you, Stephen. And have a great afternoon.
Thanks, Susan.